At the beginning of each podcast episode, hosts will typically read an ad for another company, but we're going to take this opportunity to promote and plug what we're building. We are building an AI powered app that's going to be your personal mindset coach. Think about it as if you had a therapist in your pocket, one that'll help you get to know who you really are, process your emotions, and make sense of your thoughts. The app launch waitlist is back live and it's on our website. For convenience, we also left a link in the show notes. It's very simple. All you got to do is put your name and email address and you're signed up for the waitlist. So you'll be the first to know when we launch. And also, you'll be the first to be able to actually test it. For now, here's a clip from this week's episode.
I really don't think anybody is better than me. I could be sitting in a room with a president, and I understand you've done a lot. I respect you. I'm not saying like we're on the same level, but we're all just people, and you've done more than me. Great. You're older than me. Who knows what I'll do by the time I get to your age? So I don't feel this sense of anybody is above me. So why do I need to act differently to impress you?
All right, so I typically start the conversation with the word authenticity. Mm-hmm. It's a buzzword, probably hear really often. It was actually the word of the year last year. Yeah.
I didn't know there was a word of the year.
The more you know. What does it mean to you when you hear it, though?
When I hear authenticity,
Yeah.
I think of the word custom. I think of just unique, I guess.
Like customization of yourself?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that...
Like you're creating a character on a video game or something like that?
No, I think that like knowing yourself, and this is something I've learned like getting older. Obviously, you know yourself a lot better when you're closer to 30 than you do at 21. But I think the more you get to know yourself, the more you unlock like these different versions of you. And I think that while you should always be yourself in every situation, I think customizing what part of yourself you bring to certain tables, I don't know, I think that's authenticity. I think because when I think of being authentic, I'm always myself. Okay. But I'm not the same person in church, the courtroom, and the club. And so I think they're all me, just different versions. And I think like some people, when they think of authenticity, it's like, I'm always this person no matter where I am. Mm-hmm. And that can be a roadblock to yourself, really. Like that can hurt you.
I was just having this conversation with a friend. We were talking about the same thing, and he said what you said, and I kind of disagreed with him. Well, I agree. I don't think we're like the same exact version of ourselves in all of those situations, but I do believe that the closer that we bring all of those together, the less work that we'll do being actors. And like the more that we can focus on like being who we are. But like when you are your most authentic self, like what are some adjectives that you would use to describe yourself?
Well, that's a good question.
Or people have described you. Yeah.
I think I try to be positive.
Okay.
I'm definitely hardworking.
So you're you're always the optimistic person?
Yeah.
In the room? Okay.
I think that I'm very solution oriented. I don't like to sit with problems. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's where the positivity comes from. I'm like, it's gonna be fine. So let's figure out how we're gonna make it be fine. And I think I'm honest, sometimes to a fault, but I'm definitely the friend that my friends go to for like, Janelle's gonna tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
Oh.
Yeah.
Where did you get that from? Growing up, like, did you see somebody being like those traits that you're talking about?
Yeah, my dad. Like, okay. I think I probably didn't understand it so much when I was younger. And then as I got older, my dad was like the perfect model for me of how I say, like when you say you're being an actor and you're putting on, I really don't feel that way because I am all of those people. Mm-hmm. And my dad was born in Dominican Republic, raised in Dominican Republic.
De lo mío.
Came here when he was like 19 or 18 or something, joined the military, spent almost 30 years in the military, fought 2 wars. And so my dad has a part of him that is very Dominican. Mm-hmm. And we grew up with all the, having a Dominican dad. And then there's a part of my dad that's American and has a lot of pride in this country, and you know, the fact that he was in the military and that he has a very strong sense of self in who he is, and he's never trying to convince anybody of anything. And so it's kind of cool. Like, I grew up in, now it's a bigger city, but at the time it was a small town in Florida that's very white, very conservative, and not very big. And I never saw my dad be different people or act like, you know, he was putting on a front. I could see my dad, you know, go into a room with people that clearly didn't want him there and feel just as comfortable as in a room with people that looked just like him or anybody else. And he wasn't putting on a show. He was just confident in the fact that he belongs in every room he walks into, and he gave that to us.
Did he share certain experiences with you of not feeling like he belonged in certain spaces? Like, people made him feel like he didn't belong in certain spaces?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so there was a time where he came home and he was telling us how he was at a gas station and he was speaking to a coworker, and they were speaking to each other in Spanish. And this guy came up to him and was like, this is America, you need to speak English, blah, blah, blah. And my dad was like, dude, I fought 2 wars for this country. I gave almost 30 years of my life to this country. What have you done for this country that makes you more American than me to tell me how I should act in my country that I fought for? And like I said, like, my dad will out-American you in Spanish. It's crazy. But at the same time, he's very Dominican, and he loves being Dominican, and he's very in his culture. And so we are Dominican American. And I think there's 2 sides of that. You know, I'm not acting if I'm being the American part of my upbringing, like
Sure.
with certain music and certain, you know, whatever, or the Dominican part, or so. Yeah, I don't ever really feel like I'm acting. I'm gonna start dancing in the club. I'm not gonna, you know, start rolling my eyes in the courtroom.
Yeah, but that's interesting. Like, and you're not an only child, right? So you have siblings.
No, I have a lot of siblings.
How many siblings?
I have.
Shout out to Dominican men.
I have 3 younger sisters. I have 2 older half sisters.
Dominican
So
men.
we're all girls.
Yeah.
Well, that's what
Interesting.
happens to Dominican men.
Well, wait, what happens to Dominican?
You get all girls,
Oh, why is that?
so you can learn your lesson.
Hashtag Dominican men don't cheat. But it's interesting, him as a man, sort of like defending himself, or you know, speaking up, speaking out against, you know, if he's confronted. But like, as a woman, I wonder, like, were there certain, like, what were the expectations that he might have placed on you as far as like how you should carry yourself? Was it that same level of expectation of you being like, no, like, you
Yeah.
be confident, stand up for yourself, do all those things? Like, what was that like?
Yeah. If there was ever something that I used to get really frustrated. I'd be like, oh, Dad, I got a B on this and I worked really hard. And he'd be like, well, why didn't you get an A? Did someone else get an A? And I'd be like, what? Like, I worked so hard on this and I did well. And he'd be like, that's good. But, you know, there's no reason why those people could do it and you couldn't. So you need to figure out what they did, because, you know, they're not better than you. And at the time it was frustrating, but now I was talking to one of my sisters about it earlier. Like, I really don't think anybody is better than me. I could be sitting in a room with a president, and I understand you've done a lot. I respect you. I'm not saying like we're on the same level, but we're all just people, and you've done more than me. Great. You're older than me. Who knows what I'll do by the time I get to your age? So I don't feel this sense of anybody is above me. So why do I need to act differently to impress you?
Do you think all of your siblings caught on to that, like, confidence, or even, like, you said this word, not me, delusional level of confidence, or do you think that's just what you specifically gravitated towards?
No, I think we all have it. I
Interesting.
think the older we get, the more confident we are in it. I'm definitely a lot more confident now than I was in my earlier 20s.
Why weren't you confident in your early 20s?
I was, but now I know who I am. I know what I'm doing. I know, there's a lot of, just in life, you don't know what you're doing. You're a student. You're trying to figure things out. First time living on your own, like things like that. Where now, like, I told you when we had like our call before this, I was in a hoodie, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but I also don't really feel that imposter syndrome anymore that I felt when I graduated law school, where it was like, unless I'm wearing a suit and I can prove to you I'm a lawyer, like I'm not even going to bother saying it because I don't think you'll believe me. And now it's like, well, regardless of what I'm wearing, I say in a courtroom suit, in a bathing suit, or my birthday suit, I am a lawyer. Like, there's no, I don't have to prove it. I earned that.
But it's interesting, right? Because you've grown up with this like delusional level of confidence, which I often say that I have as well. But then there is a point where you start to doubt yourself, and then you sort of like overcome it. Like, when was the first time when you started having a little bit of that imposter syndrome?
When I graduated law school.
So not in law school, but when you graduated law school?
No, we were all students in law school. Why would other students intimidate me?
Even like applying to law school, or just like that was never a thing. It was just like, oh, whatever.
I knew it was going to be hard. I was intimidated by the work of law school and like what I was, supposed to expected to do going into it, but I was never intimidated by the environment itself. You should never be intimidated by a room that you're in. You're in it. Like even now, I go up against so many attorneys that are so much older and more experienced and white men. And they don't like to sit across a table with me at a mediation and hear that they're wrong about something, or that they end up having to give me more money, or, they don't like to lose to somebody who looks like me. And I don't have to prove to them that I'm better. I just have to do my work and show up and do it better.
Yeah.
And I think that's what my dad always showed us. Like, you don't have to prove to people that you belong there. Just belong. Like,
just belong there.
Always hold your head up. Don't do anything that makes you bow your head, and you won't have a problem.
And as you just belonging, it'll be a representation of what it is.
What it is.
But even before we even get into like you graduating law school, like was law always the back of your head? You were like, this is what I want to do.
No. My mom is actually a doctor, and so I thought I wanted to be a doctor. And then I'm really bad at math. Most lawyers are. And I went to my guidance counselor, and I was like, I cannot take physics too. Like, please don't make me. I'd rather change my whole major. And I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll go to law school because I like to read and write. And my guidance counselor was like, well, there's a lot more to it than that to be pre-law, and you're a little soft-spoken, so I don't know if law is like great for you. Maybe you could consider an English major or a communications major or something. And I think out of spite, I was just like, well, I'm gonna go to law school, and even if I don't wanna be a lawyer, I'll find something else to do with the degree, and if it doesn't work out, the worst thing I can be is a lawyer, so I'll be okay either way.
That's not a bad backup plan.
Yeah, I mean, it worked out for me. I don't recommend that people choose their career out of spite.
What did that do for you? I mean, I get motivated by it. Like, if somebody doubts me, I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna,
yeah.
Like, that gets me going. Like, what did it do for you when he was like, you should probably do English or whatever?
It sent me to law school. I worked really hard. I changed my major to pre-med, or pre-law. I took the classes that I thought would make more sense there's no criteria of what it is to get into law school. So I just took a lot of classes that I could learn more about psychology, negotiation, philosophy, politics.
But is that a consistent theme though, of people like you being motivated by doubt of others? It is. Like, what are some other examples of like people doubting you, where you're just like, damn, that really did push me to do that?
I mean, I'm a little brown woman in law. Everybody doubts me. There's not I didn't even know until not that long ago that only 2% of attorneys in this country are Hispanic women.
Wow.
And
2% is
2%.
Why?
Yeah, it's a really low stat. And I never felt that. I guess I noticed that I never really went up against many attorneys that looked like me, or, most of us were like in more junior levels and things like that. But when I saw that stat, I was like, wow, I guess we are doing something special here. And like that really motivated me even on my TikTok. Like I want people to look at me and be like, I can do that. I want more people who look like me to do what I do, because we can help people who look like me better.
Yeah.
I think there's a different level of understanding when you're working with your people.
Yeah. Wait, so getting into your career, like when you started, like what was that moment where you just like this thing? I don't know if you use the word intimidating, but I'll use the word uncomfortable. Like when you started working, like what did you see?
I mean, I think I just, like, I had the law degree and I had the job, but I didn't really know what I was doing yet. Like, I just started, and going up against people who I thought knew everything, and I thought, you know, you're this great attorney and you've been doing it for so long, you must know every law and every whatever, or even going before a judge. Like, they just, until you enter that world, it seems so up there. Like, I don't know, like a judge to me was like, what does it take to be a judge? Like, I don't know, like, you know, you must have done so many things. And then you find out some judges are appointed because their dad was a judge. And then, like, when you start to learn these dynamics and meet these people more and start to understand them on a little bit more of a personal level than this, like, judge, you know, obviously a lot of judges are brilliant and they've done a lot to get to where they are. But a lot were handed those positions. And you can tell who was handed their position and who really, you know, should be a judge when they're helping you on your case and the way that they do certain things. And so I think as I started being in those rooms more often and seeing those people as just people, I was able to break that down too. But initially it was like, you're a lawyer, you're a judge. And I'm just like, I just graduated law school. I would say I worked at a law firm. I wouldn't even say I was a lawyer.
Really?
Yeah.
But why did you feel the need to do that?
I don't know.
It's just like we're at a networking event, we meet each other, and we're just like, oh, what do you do? And you're just like, oh, work at a law firm. Interesting.
Yeah, probably for like the first year of my career, I would say that, and people would be like, oh, are you a paralegal? Are you a receptionist? And I'd be like, no, I'm a lawyer. And they'd be like, well, why didn't you just say that?
But that's also a funny, like, social experiment for you to use this broad term of, I work in the legal field, and that can mean so many different industries. And people, it's funny that like a lot of people didn't automatically just assume lawyer. They just assumed.
Oh, even crazier. I had a case where I was representing like, I don't know, like 10 demolition workers.
Okay.
And they came off the job site to meet me in court for this conference. So I'm walking into court wearing my suit, and there's like 10 guys dressed in construction clothes, like covered in dust and whatever behind me. And we walk in, and the judge looks at all of us and goes, okay, now we just wait for the attorney.
That
and I'm
stuff
like,
really happens?
did you think I was a demolition worker? Like, not even for the fact of, but like, what about me says that I know how to break any kind of, you know, like, I'm standing here in a suit with these 10 like big construction guys behind me, and you're here like, we just have to wait for the attorney. Like, who do you think I am?
But those are the type of things that like you'll see on like SNL or like some like Comedy Central
all
skit.
the time.
Like,
Ask any female Latina lawyer, they'll all, it's not, I don't have like a rare story. We've all been called the paralegal, the translator, the court reporter, the, you know, people who are partners and own like very high up in companies and law firms. Like, it's just, it's not a rare thing. It's not unique.
that's
it's
wild
the
to me.
industry.
Yeah, like that just sounds like such a teeny moment that I'm just like, oh, that stuff like still happens.
Oh, absolutely.
That's fascinating. Wait, it's almost as like we put these people on like pedestals almost. And I did the same thing when I got into tech. I mean, I went to a good school. Northeastern is a decent school, but it's not like Harvard or Yale. So going into it, although like you said, I'm in the room with the people, I'm at the same level of everyone, yet in my head, I created this hypothetical hierarchy that doesn't exist. But in my head, I put it above them to the point where like they would say something, but I had an idea or I had an opinion, and I was like, no, I'm wrong. I was telling myself in my head. So there were so many times where I had the right answer and didn't even speak up because I just assumed that they were right. Meanwhile, they were wrong. You know what I mean? So not only do we do the hypothetical hierarchy, but we start to dim ourselves in some way because, like, at least for me, like, I didn't think my opinion or my idea or whatever was worthy. And that's really detrimental to our career. Like, it holds us back a lot of times.
And that's why I say, like, if you're in the room, you're in the room.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, I'm not going to say I never have that feeling, obviously, but that's how I remind myself. I'm like, well, I'm here.
Yeah.
I got here for some reason. They didn't just pull me off the street and let me walk into this room. So
when you were creating those like stories in your heads and maybe creating these hypothetical hierarchies, like in what ways do you think you sort of hid a little bit about yourself?
Just like you said, there were times where I was like, maybe there's a better way that we could argue this, or maybe, there's some other evidence that we should be using instead of this, or the judge may question something that I know has nothing to do with the law that we're talking about, and that actually legally they're not even supposed to question or involve that question at all. But I'm not going to speak up and say, Your Honor, that's not relevant. We don't need to talk about that. Like, I'm not going to, now I will. But I think, just silence.
Silence.
I think when you feel that way, you try to just be like a figure in the room instead of an actual voice in the room. It took me a little bit to find that voice.
That's powerful. You try to be a figure in the room instead of a voice in the room. And it's interesting too, because like attorneys, we often think of them as just like individuals sort of like just doing their own thing. But oftentimes, not every time, but you work still for like a corporation as well, right? So it's not like you're just representing people. You're often having meetings with other colleagues, sharing best practices, all these kind of things. Do you think earlier in your career, you felt comfortable being yourself in that environment?
I don't think there was really room for me to be myself in that environment. When you're first starting in law, you're not usually given like, here are some cases, go work on stuff or whatever. You're given templates, you're given like very specific instructions about things that you're allowed to do, and then your list of what you learn how to do grows and stuff. So initially I was just a figure in the room. I was just taking notes behind my senior attorney, who was actually the one doing things, or I was like behind the scenes translating to my clients while,
Right.
So I think part of why I felt that way is because it wasn't my time to be a voice in the room. I didn't have one. And the structure of that dynamic when you first come in as like a first year associate, it doesn't really give you the room for that, because you also don't really know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So like there were times where I was like, oh, but I read about this. And I probably, should I?
Yeah, hold on. Yeah. I'll just take a second.
Yeah, I probably could have said something a few times and didn't, but I also think it just wasn't my time. As I gained experience level and I moved up and I had that voice in the room, I definitely learned to use it.
That's interesting though, because I feel like you did probably have something to share, just because, like, all right, let's say you're, I don't know, in investment banking, two industries that we're both not in. Like, just because you are an intern or junior associate and you're technically not the one making the phone calls to clients, but you probably have a perspective maybe that you learned in school, maybe that you read it here or there. Just because like you don't have as much experience compared to the senior associate doesn't mean like your opinion isn't valuable.
Yeah. I worked at a smaller firm, so I think I probably had more freedom to voice my opinions than I would have if I was at a bigger firm. But I think part of it is also just law is its own world. Like the language is different, and it's done that way on purpose, which is why I think it's so great that there's so many lawyers online sort of breaking down that barrier. Because, even if you were to try to look up a law and read it for yourself and see, if it applies to you or not, it's written in a way that you may feel confused, or there's words, and it's done on purpose to make people feel like, law is here and you need a lawyer, you need somebody to kind of get you into this part. You can't just step into that. That's so untrue.
Right.
And even, as a lawyer coming into it, I was intimidated by the fact of like, maybe I did have a better idea, but I wouldn't be able to articulate it in the legalese that I had to, or, and so I think I probably had a lot more freedom to voice my opinion than a lot of people do at bigger firms, but I didn't feel comfortable in my ability to, even if the opinion would have been helpful.
It makes sense. I mean, I think that happens to everybody when they're starting their career. Like, irrespective of industry, we always like, all right, well, I did get hired. They want to hear me, but like, I don't feel as confident compared to like where I was, if I'm comparing myself to where I am now, because I'm comparing myself to like the senior people that have been here longer. What about appearance though? I think law, like finance, is so old school when it comes to like what is deemed acceptable, unprofessional, etc. Like, what are some things that, I don't know, you may wear like now or on the weekends that you're just like, I can't do this to work. Right now I'm counting like 4 piercings on one ear. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
my business ear and my party ear.
business and party. That's the name of the episode. My business and party ear. No, but I mean yeah. No, but it's really interesting. Like finance, law, there's a couple of government agencies, like very old school, traditional. Like, what are some things you noticed when you first walked in of like, because I think when we first get a job, we all do an eye test. We're like, what's everyone dressed like? All right, yeah. Like, when I first walked in, I looked at my manager, I was like, I'm using him as a mannequin. Whatever he's wearing, I'm gonna buy that whole outfit, every color. Like, what did you see when you walked in?
Well, the first firm I worked at, I was the only female attorney in my department. And all the other women that worked at the firm, with the exception of the owner's daughter, who was also an attorney, but obviously she could wear whatever she wanted, were paralegals. And so the paralegals would come in sometimes in leggings or whatever. I knew I couldn't do that, so I didn't really have like a direct point of reference mannequin. And I remember like my first week, I came in every day in a suit, but I wasn't going to court. I was just like sitting in the office. And on that Friday, my senior associate, who like to this day we're still really great friends, was like, you know, you don't have to wear a suit every day to come into the office. But my office was in Queens, and I definitely, I think, dressed a little more Manhattan, you know? And so, like, they would make fun of me in, like, a, you know,
in a
whatever
playful way, yeah.
I would, like, yeah, I dressed up for work, and I liked to wear bright colors and, like, have fun with my...
What do you mean bright colors?
I don't know, like, as soon as I could afford it, I got a subscription on Rent the Runway.
Okay.
And I was like, I had a different outfit every day going into the office. Like, I don't know. I had a lot of fun with it.
But you're into fashion and you like to dress up.
I do.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that's great. But it's interesting, like you said, even comparing yourself to paralegals, and sometimes they wear like tights or leggings. And you're like, I can't do that. Did someone tell you can't do that? Or like, why did you think you couldn't do that?
No one told me I couldn't do that. And I don't know if somebody would have said something to me if I had, honestly. Yeah, I just thought I couldn't do that.
Yeah, I mean, I know the answers. Like, we've just been trained to, think that we have to do a certain thing.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it's interesting that someone told you that, as far as like, hey, listen, like, you don't got to do that.
Yeah.
And I think you make another interesting distinction of, and this happens in every industry, it's kind of like internal versus external. And like, I was in sales, right? So many times I felt comfortable wearing whatever, like I could dress like this if I had internal meetings, but if I was doing clients, my mind is like, oh, well, I'm representing more than just myself. I need to dress a certain way as well. Like, is that another expectation when it comes to legal field as well?
Yeah, but I think part of it is also maybe a little bit with respect. I do feel like, obviously, not that I'm judging people on what they wear or whatever, but I do feel like if we had an important meeting or something, it is a certain level of respect to show up dressed appropriately for that meeting. If like you have this really, really serious important meeting with someone you've scheduled and then they show up in a t-shirt and shorts, you might be like, well, did you care about this at all? Like, and not because they have to dress up for it, but more so I think the nature of what we're doing. Like in court, you have to. I couldn't go to court like wearing just jeans and a sweater or something.
I've always wondered, are there specific rules? There are.
Yeah.
What are the rules? Can I look this up?
I mean,
Does
for
it differ
women,
by
it's
state?
not so strict. I think it's just a professional thing, but I've definitely, like for men, like you need a tie. I actually remember I used to share an office with another associate at my firm, and he had a conference over Zoom, like during COVID when everything was digital. And even though it was over Zoom, the judge like went in on him because he was wearing a polo shirt. He didn't realize he had a conference that day. And the judge was like, okay, you don't have a suit and tie? Like, next time I expect you to be dressed appropriately for our conferences. With women, they're a little more lenient because, Like you can wear a dress, you can wear a skirt, you can wear a suit, or
That is hilarious. I didn't know judges were like low-key fashion police.
Some, not all, but like some. And that I think is where the respect thing comes in a little bit.
But like if I wanted to look it up, like is there like an official, I mean like are there like is like an official rules, or are these like unspoken rules?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I do know
Sounds like a
that
TikTok
like
video.
it is. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. Because I've always heard of the rule.
Yeah.
Like I've always heard, men need to put on a suit to go to court, and like I would keep a blazer in my thing just in case whatever I was wearing, I had to throw a blazer on and go to court.
Yeah.
I always heard the rules. I don't know if it's like a strict thing, but I know they're held to them.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because this idea of like respect or like what's appropriate, what's unprofessional, like we don't have to agree, but I think we all have some sort of bias, all of us, right? Like I go to coffee shops all the time. I often share this example, but like if the barista doesn't look like a Brooklyn hipster, I typically walk out of there.
That's fair.
Because in my head, I'm like, listen, the best latte art is a dude with a ponytail, a bunch of piercings and tattoos.
He cares about my cup.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if I walk in and this little Latina lady short looking like my mom, I'm like, oh, I've never seen her. I've seen her make a greca, you know what I mean? Like drip coffee. I've never seen her make a latte.
Not for $10.
Exactly. But like that, like how you look has nothing to do with how well you can articulate all this. But I've just made up that story in my head around like how well this is gonna taste depending on how someone looks. And I think we all carry that to some extent.
Yeah.
Like we all have some sort of bias in our heads around perception, looks, dress, etc. And I think so many like our perceptions often impact the rules and policies that people create. Hence the idea of like, like respect associated to like how we dress. I don't know, it's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, when I say respect, I don't think about it in terms of capability. Like I'm not saying that if you show up in a t-shirt and shorts, I'm gonna think that this meeting is gonna go bad because, this person isn't professional or something.
Yeah.
I think of it more like, in general, like let's say your girlfriend or your wife, you're taking her out for dinner that night, and
I was thinking a date too. I don't know why.
You planned a really, really nice date, and like you're taking her to a really expensive restaurant, and you're like so excited about this, and then she shows up in like flip-flops and a bathing suit cover-up. You might be like,
girl, what you doing? Yeah.
Don't you care? Like I put in effort into, so, and I don't think that, you're going to look at her and be like, well, she doesn't, she's not going to be a good person, or I'm not going to like her or whatever.
Right.
But I do think that even for yourself, how you present yourself is a sign of respect to yourself and to other people. And that has nothing to do with, you can present yourself very well in a t-shirt and flip-flops.
Yeah.
It's just, the right situation, and that I mean, I think the date example is the best thing I can come up with. Like,
I mean, I'll give you another one. Growing up, and I think maybe it's like a Dominican culture thing, but I think in many cultures, like appearance is like very, it's like a big thing. I remember even going to the airport, like my grandfather wore a full-on suit, had the fedora with the bow on the side, and I remember like having to dress up to the airport, and I was like, I'm sorry, do we have a meeting at the airport? Like, but it was this idea of, and maybe, respect, maybe, I don't know what the right word is, but it was this idea of like, at least for them, it was like, you're representing more than you're representing this family, like put your best foot forward kind of thing.
Personally, I feel when I'm dressed up and I'm put together, even if I'm just in a sweatsuit, my sweatsuit matches and I feel like I look put together and I, whatever, I feel better about myself. I feel like...
You feel more confident
I feel more confident. I feel more, not that I deserve more respect, but I feel more respectable. I feel, like I do it for me. So, I don't know, maybe because I do it for me, I expect other people to want to do it for them too. And when I see it, I'm like, all right, well, I think it's just an environment-based thing.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I don't think you ever answered like what parts of your like you like style, you like to dress up, all these things, but like what parts of yourself when you started your career did you feel like you couldn't like display hot?
I mean, I started my career when I was 23,
Okay.
maybe
you had to do a lot
24.
of school.
I had just turned 24. So at 23, 24, I didn't dress like a lawyer, whatever that means. I didn't own a suit, you know? And so for me, I wore a lot of crop tops and jeans, and I grew up in Florida. And so I definitely had to overhaul my wardrobe and buy more, never own slacks. Like, I thought pants were just like jeans and shorts.
Yeah.
It's like, what other pants do you need?
Yeah.
And like sweats. So just, I think that also came with age though. I don't think it was just a career thing.
I wonder, because earlier, like there was a theme that you mentioned about like feeling doubted, right? Like oftentimes people would doubt you based on various things. I wonder if besides just having an interest, a passion in, you know, fashion and all these kind of things, I wonder if beyond that, it's a way to instantly get someone's, get past the doubt instantly based on like how you dress.
Yeah.
Is that a thing? Am I like overthinking this? Okay.
And that goes back to, so there's kind of two sides of it, because I do see what you're saying where it's like, I don't want to be an actor. I don't want to put on a show for other people, and I don't want to whatever. But at the same time, there are things that we have to do that we don't want to do. And you do them because they benefit you more. So if me being my authentic self and liking to wear sweatpants is going to make my day significantly harder in this meeting, I'm doing myself a disservice by saying, no, I'm gonna be myself and I'm gonna wear sweatpants because that's who I am. Because now this is just another hurdle I've given myself to have to overcome. And the reality is, like, this is what it is. This is the world we live in, and this is how it is. And we are slowly changing that, but you need to be realistic. And so I do think that carrying yourself a certain way does make your life a little easier. And I'm all about making my life easier. If like me just saying, oh, I'm my authentic self, I don't change wherever I go, and like, I'm still me. But if I'm gonna go in like big and bad and cursing and whatever, like trying to be this person that I'm not, to put on a show to get this respect, I'm making my life harder. Whereas sometimes you can, I don't want to say adapt, because I don't think it's adapting. I do truly believe that like it is about being yourself, but there are so many versions to us.
There's so many facets of it.
There's so many facets, and it's okay to bring out some more than others. It's like a resume. You have a million things that you've done, but depending on the type of job you're applying for, you may not need to give a resume that has those million things. And if anything, if you do give that resume that has those million things, the great things that would make you best in that situation may not pop out because they're drowned out by everything else. So.
And you don't have to also do everything at once. Like maybe you're showing these versions of yourself now, and then over time, you start showing a little bit more, and who knows, right? But I think that's the other thing. It's like people, I think you said the word show. Like people think we have to display everything or come out the next day as a completely different version, or I don't know, let it all out, and right? Like
that's
you get
exhausting.
I mean, both ways, but like you get to decide that, right?
Yeah.
And also I want to be clear, like I'm not here to try to push any way. I'm just trying to get an
No,
idea
it's
of
good.
like,
We should disagree. That makes good conversation.
No, but it's more so like I'm just trying to figure out kind of like your self-discovery journey of like that conflict that we often face throughout life. That's all.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I grew up in a very white, conservative town. And I learned how to adjust my behavior in a lot of different types of rooms with a lot of different types of people. And while in a way that may sound like a bad thing,
Tell me about that.
I see it as a superpower.
That's interesting.
I'm really proud of my ability to, I could walk into a room full of Black people, I could walk into a room full of white people, I could walk into a room full of Hispanics, anything. And I'm perfectly comfortable. I can make everybody else feel comfortable, and I'm not othered. And I don't think that's because I'm trying to adapt and blend into their thing.
Yeah.
I think it's because I'm able to pull from my own experiences and from what makes me me and works in this situation. And because of that, it makes my life a lot easier. I don't have to prove myself as much and it also helps my confidence. The whole like, I don't think you're better than me. I don't think that you belong in this room and I don't. And part of it comes from that too.
That's interesting that you see it as a superpower.
I do.
Yeah. Do you think in all of those rooms you are different?
No.
Okay.
I think I would have had just as much fun in college at a Green Day concert as I would have had at a DMX concert.
Sure. Sure.
And I think there's a lot of people who feel that way. And I think, honestly, this is a really big issue that first generation
Yeah.
people have.
Yeah.
Because I want to be really Dominican, but I was born and raised here.
Yeah.
And I know Dominican culture very well. I was raised very much in it. I go to DR all the time. I got married in DR.
Yeah.
But there are words that our people say
Oh my
that
God.
I'm like,
Every time I get a haircut.
there's new slang every other day.
Yeah.
Like, unless you are in DR, there's only so much you can do.
Listen,
you
when
know?
I see my barber, I need Google Translate because I'm
Literally.
like, I literally don't
Even
know.
as a Dominican,
I just be
I'm
like,
like, I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
And so,
I've never felt more insecure about my Dominicanness when I get a haircut. Like,
So
he's on
when
another
I'm
level.
around like real Dominican. you
Yeah,
know
I
what
get it, I get it, I
But
get it.
like I'm American, and then around Americans,
Yeah.
I'm Dominican.
Yeah.
And so that grapple of like I'm not enough of either of them, or I'm only half of either of them, I don't see it that way. I see it as a superpower of I have access to both. And I've always joked that like for me, I ironically did end up marrying somebody from a different culture, but I would always joke that like if I married someone from a different culture, I wanted to create like a little superhuman, because I'm like, my husband's Indian, so I'm like, if we have kids, our kids could speak English,
Yeah.
Spanish, and Hindi, and be totally comfortable in American culture, in Dominican culture, and in
Yes.
Indian culture.
Yes.
And I do see that as a superpower. I don't see it as I have to,
Yeah.
hide this part of me or do this side of me. I see it as like, look at all the rooms that I can comfortably be in.
Yeah. So now I see what you're talking about, and now I understand what you meant by superpower. I 100% agree with that. I think it's dope. See, I think it's very limiting if you're, let's just say, Dominican, and you like only fuck with like, I don't know, I'm making this up, but like Dominican food, and you've never
you're
tried
only
Italian.
comfortable around
You've never
Dominican
tried.
people
Yeah,
and
that's
Dominican
very
culture. No.
unfortunate, right? I would hope that like people expand, meet different people, etc. Yes. What I was trying to get at is that, and maybe this is just like scars for me, but when I would step into certain rooms, I would be the version of myself that I thought they wanted to see from me, right? So I would, like, there's nothing wrong with expanding your preferences, but I got to a point where I was just like trying to do shit just to be accepted rather than really enjoying what I was expanding my preferences into. So I think that's more of what it is, but like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with expanding your preferences.
Yeah, I don't necessarily, maybe that's why I see it differently, because I don't base it on what I think those people want to see.
Right.
I think it's more based on the situation.
And what you enjoy.
So
right.
maybe the way that I would be in this situation is not the way those people would want to see, but they'll see that I'm comfortable in this situation.
Yeah.
And that's what I think matters. You being comfortable in that room is what gets you accepted. You pretending to be what they want you to be
And that's what I do.
is not going to get you accepted,
Yeah.
because it's obvious.
Yes.
It's the same thing. Any culture, when you see somebody and they're trying to act like something else, it's weird. It makes people
It's weird,
uncomfortable.
yeah.
Like it's very obvious that you're not being yourself.
Yes.
But if you can find a way to be yourself in that room and that you're comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter what those other people expected to see. If anything, they will look at you and they'll say, oh, you can be like this in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be done in such an extreme way that it has the opposite effect.
Yes.
Is my point.
I completely agree. And what you're describing around that uncomfortability, that was me, 100%. And I think, like, when you said superpower, and I was like, that doesn't feel right, I, in my mind, was associating it to like faking, whereas like what you're describing is just like the curiosity, the adaptability, the being able to resonate because you have such an expansive experience. Like 100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like, you know, if you walk into a room full of white people, I can draw on my experiences of, you know, like certain things in American and white culture that I knew from growing up. And I'm not putting on a show. I'm not whatever. Like that's a side of me I can comfortably talk to you about and we can relate and have that. Whereas if I came in strictly trying to be this person, we're never going to find a middle ground. And I think everybody has something in common with everybody.
I agree.
So I'm always trying to look for those things that we can meet in the middle and be in common. And it doesn't mean that I'm leaving myself or my authenticity behind.
Yeah.
It's a part of me. It all is. Yeah. There's so many parts of me.
So many parts. And funny enough, that's why I named the company Plurawl, because I think oftentimes we try to be the singular version of ourselves when the beauty is when we bring all parts of it together. More than one, plural, you know?
Yeah.
I'm curious, let's talk about you creating content.
Okay.
How did that feel when you started creating content?
Awkward. Really awkward.
I bet.
You can tell, like in my first few videos, I'm very awkward.
Why did you want to do it though?
I was working for a law firm. I was heading up their discrimination department and we needed to bring in clients. And at the time they had me doing all these radio and TV ads. I think we even did like Univision and all this stuff. And we were spending so much money on it and it was not really bringing in that many clients and I did not like it.
Wait, but were you on a marketing team?
No, I was just the only Hispanic attorney. So like, you know, token brown, put her in the front. So I was like, you know, there's gotta be a better way. And I tried to see how many people can you pull on social media. And my sister had gone, she's gonna kill me for saying this, but like she went viral for like some really dumb shit on it.
Like what?
And,
what
like tongue twisters.
Okay.
And like all of a sudden she had this huge page on TikTok and I was like, well, if you can do that with tongue twisters, like maybe there's something here where it's not that hard.
How do you think she was received within like friends, family? It was just like, what,
it was
what the
just
hell
a
are
joke.
you
Like she wasn't taking it seriously or trying to be a content creator. It was like she put up some dumb video and went viral and she was like, oh shoot. Like,
well, so I don't know, because some people are just like, oh my God, why are you even posting content? Like, why are you putting your stuff, whatever. No, all right, cool.
And so I was like, let me see. I'm just gonna try one thing, and if it gets views and people come on the page, then I'll show it to the firm as something that like they should let me invest time in. So at the time, Andrew Cuomo had all these sexual harassment allegations and all this stuff. I made a 3-part video, or 3 videos, I guess, talking about that situation and talking about the lawsuit, but the way that I'm talking now. And so I literally broke it down and I was like, you know, and then she said that he grabbed her on the neck and he was like, I didn't do that. And so like, and again, that's me doing what I do in my version. And it worked. And I got a good amount of views from that. I took it to my firm and I was like, look, some people even emailed me like saying that they think they have a case or whatever. And they were like, yeah, keep doing it. So I kept doing it. I was bringing in clients from it. And then I left that firm and I was working for a startup, but people kept messaging me and like leaving questions. And I guess I just didn't want to leave them hanging. So I kept making videos and I just kept the page going, even though I wasn't really doing anything with it. I never set out to be like a social media person. It was all just marketing. I've learned that this is its own job and it's not my job. It really is like its own thing. And yeah, I kept doing that. This guy reached out to me and he was like, my wife is pregnant. She's going through really bad pregnancy discrimination. And I showed her a bunch of your videos and we really want to work with you. And I was like, I'm not at a law firm. I can refer you to great attorneys that I know that, you know, can help you. And he was like, will you please just talk to my wife? I spoke to his wife and she was like, I understand, but I want you to represent me. And I was like, I'm not at a law firm. It's just gonna be me and you. If you really want me to do this with you, I'll do it. But otherwise, like, you can go to a law firm, they'll handle the whole thing for you, and you can be much more hands-off. And she was like, no, I wanna do this with you. we ended up settling that case for a very good number against a very big company here in New York. And I was like, I can do this. And so I incorporated my own practice, and then I started taking clients, and it's where I am now.
Tell me about that mind process around just like, because you said it a couple of times there. He was like, hey, listen, it's just me. Like, I don't have, like, I'm not at a law firm. I'm not representing all these kind of things, but in a lot, like you're an entrepreneur now, right? Like, how does that feel? Like being an entrepreneur? Oh my God, now when you introduce yourself, what do you say? Like, I'm sure that was even weird for a long time.
What do I say?
Do you still say you work, what did you say
depends.
before? I worked at a law office or something?
Yeah, I work at a law
Yeah,
firm.
what do you say now?
Honestly, now I try not to say I'm a lawyer because everybody's got a question. People are like, oh, who are you? I'm like, Janelle.
That's so
What
funny.
do
What do you
you
say,
do?
content creator?
I live. I work, you know, we all do stuff.
It's yeah.
No, I mean, now I'll say I'm an attorney, but I try to make that like the fifth thing I say about me.
Entrepreneur, maybe, I don't know.
Business, I do. I work with people, I sue businesses.
That's so funny. No, but it's interesting, just like society, titles, all those kind of things. Like for a long time when I quit my job, and I was working at TikTok, I was so confident. I was like, I couldn't wait for people to ask me.
Really?
But when I was like a business owner, entrepreneur, I was like, I feel so insecure about this.
Really?
Yeah, because I don't have the brand name behind
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I like saying that I have my own firm. I'm also not attached to it though. I don't have like this ego about being a solo practitioner. I think like if a firm came to me, gave me a great offer and something
Sure.
I would consider that like made sense for me from a financial perspective, like sure. Because even my firm, like I love it. I'm very proud of what I've done so far. But it was something I kind of fell into. And I think that's like the story of my life was I just fall into things and they work out. So I don't know that this is something like I would do it like this forever. I don't know. I never know where I'll end up, but.
Interesting. That's, I mean, outsider's perspective, I'm like, she's blowing up, she's killing it. I just thought that was like the trajectory.
Maybe.
Interesting.
I never know where I'm going.
When you started making videos though, were you surprised to get the sort of reaction and views that you started getting?
Yeah, good and bad. So.
Tell me about that, yeah.
I was really surprised by the positive feedback because
Like what?
like I get so many messages from people who are like, you inspired me, I want to look into employment law now, I want to go to law school because of you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like,
That's beautiful.
Really, really cool. I feel like if I could just bring one more brown lawyer, you know,
That 2%.
into, and so I do feel like I actually am doing something to change that, which I think is really cool, and it makes me feel really good when I like see those messages. And then the downside, I mean, there's people online who, I don't know what they're doing, but they're just there to like have a bad day. I don't really know like the purpose behind the comments they leave.
Like what?
Just they'll criticize anything. Like now I don't care as much. Like now I think I've gotten past the point of like, every once in a while somebody might make a very specific comment that will like get under my skin, but for the most part, I don't really care so much anymore. But I used to say a lot, like, we're just not meant to hear thousands of people's opinions on us. Like, I should never know what some loser in his mom's basement across the country thinks about my hair in this video. Like, or, you know, yeah, just, I don't know. People get really bold.
Was it a lot of, and this is, I'm just assuming, was it a lot of like, bro, you're not even a lawyer. Like, what are you doing sharing this opinion on this very specific thing?
Everything.
Those type of things?
Yeah, everything.
I mean, the internet is also just like a microcosm of the world as well. Like some of the experiences that you've, some of the comments and things that people share are probably also some of the things that people have told you in real life, both the positive and the negative. Like, I'm sure people in real life have told you like, oh my God, like, I've never seen someone that looks like you, blah, blah, blah. You get those same comments on social media, the scale is just ridiculous.
Yeah, the scale is what I think makes it more intense sometimes. And yeah, I think what I think is a little concerning is the best and worst thing is to have a video go viral, because that's when everybody starts coming out of the woodworks with all their comments, and some comments are just so unnecessary, and they're actually kind of scary. Like when you start to see, every once in a while I'll make a video on some political or controversial thing, and when you get to see what people really think when they don't have to attach their name and their face to what they're saying, sometimes it's scary. Like you're like, wow, people think like this, or people actually believe that this is okay.
Yeah.
And there have been a few times where I'm like, what kind of world are we living in?
Yeah.
And then, you know, there's the opposite side where I would say that for every one bad, there's many, many, many more good.
Of course. But our brains just tend to, you know, focus on, like, we could read 1,000 positive comments, we see one that is just like, why did you do your hair like that? And we're like, fuck, you know what I mean? But who knows? I don't have insight into the algorithm, but I would assume, and this is why we're talking, like, you caught my attention because I'm just like, you're taking such a complex topic and you're breaking it down in a way where it's digestible, right? Compared to what you said earlier, like a lot of these topics and words, jargon are created in a way for us to not understand, right? Not only are you breaking it down in a digestible way, but you're doing things that I just don't associate with a lawyer. And it's like simple shit, but you're just like there in like a tank top or a hoodie and you're like doing your makeup. And I'm just like, that's not what I expect. I expected I don't know why the imagination is like a bookshelf case in the background with all these books that you probably haven't even read, but it's just like Roman numerals on the cases, that type of shit. And you're wearing a full-on suit and you have a coffee. I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah,
you just looked like a neighbor.
that's the point.
Yeah, and I would assume that that's why people gravitate towards you. What I'm getting at is I want to thank you for making my job a bit easier and helping to redefine what it means to look like a certain profession.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Anyway, to wrap up, because we're almost at time, I want to get you out of here. What's one thing that continues to inspire you to continue being your most authentic self in these spaces?
My parents. I love to see my parents be proud of me. I love to see, like, we make fun of my dad all the time because now he's gotten better. I think he's a little more used to it. But when I graduated law school, the man was insufferable.
And what do you mean?
Like we would be here at the coffee shop getting coffee, and my dad would be like, "Oh yeah, let me get this one for my daughter. She's a lawyer." I'd be like, "Oh my God, Dad!" But I think that motivates me. I want that everything I do.
Yeah.
Anybody who knows me will see me doing it and be like, that's Janelle. I don't want anybody to see me doing something and be like, I don't know who that is. That's not, that's not something that, like, if you saw me with a bookshelf behind me and the suits and whatever, you'd be like, oh, she changed. She got a little serious or she whatever. And so, yeah, I think my parents first and foremost, but just in general, I never want to walk into a room with my head down.
Mi gente, that wraps up another episode of the Quién Tú Eres podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please do us a favor. Like, share, comment wherever you're listening to this episode. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a rating and review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Thank you, and see you next time.